live here as soon as I see that we are live, which is kind of a thing, to make sure you are live before you're live. All right. As best I can, I'm going to try to follow some comments here, okay? It's going to require some jumping around. You know what? Better turn that on. Let me get this one more stream going here, guys. We will do this. Check, check, check. One more check of my audio. And let me see it. Just make sure that my audio is good. Looks like I am up. And I got somebody looking at my Facebook one. I know it's a weird time to go live. Apologize for that, but this is hopefully going to be pretty helpful content as far as what's going on. Thank you for hanging out. Griffin, thank you for being here. I don't know. Was the premiere of The Prodigal Son pretty bad? Yeah, I guess we're good. All right, so I'm going to try to monitor Facebook and Twitter as much as I can if you got any questions. Oh, no, I can't do that. I got to use my phone for that. Well, I'll try to kind of multi-tab here and monitor Facebook and Twitter as much as I can and try not to look at the Bears or the Cardinals score while I do it. All right. This isn't really a recap video, so hopefully you know what's going on. If not, I guess why are you here? You just really think I'm that cool? You'll listen to me talk about something you don't care about? A very quick recap. I wrote for a magazine called Relevant for 16 years. From 03 to, I guess, this spring. We'll get into that a little bit. And a friend of mine, Andre Henry, wrote a post about some stuff that was going on, some things that he went through, specifically about some racial issues that were going on with the staff, some employee issues that were going on with the staff at the hands of the owner and CEO, Cameron Strang. And I 100% believed him because I had seen so many kind of different eras of the magazine. He and I talked on Thursday, and I just didn't think it was going to be a thing. Like, I 100% believed him. And, I mean, at this point, I don't even know if last week, I don't know if he would say that I was a contributing writer to Relevant or not, which we'll get into. But I thought that was going to be it. Like, I just honestly didn't think that anything could really get done about this this issue of how poorly employees are treated. I will give two examples real quick, and then we get started. So, Andre basically talked about how when he tried to just assert his duties as the editor of the magazine, he quickly had that taken away from him when he did his job. I'll let you read the blog, and then shortly thereafter, Rebecca Marie Joe, who's a former editor I also worked with, wrote a blog post about how some other weird stuff had gone on, like asking, she didn't want to use her last name, which is why I didn't use her last name, but asking her to use her last name. She took it out because of privacy issues. And then Cameron personally put it back in because he wanted the magazine to sound more ethnic or more diverse or whatever. Then stories started coming out about how they would have full-time employees who were writing more than one article pick like an ethnic sounding name for the second article they wrote to make the magazine seem bigger and stuff. Which, hey, I mean, if you're going to use a pen name to kind of make the magazine look more diverse, I get it. Maybe. But is it illegal? No. Is it weird and concerning? Yes. You start putting some of these things together, there does seem to be a racial issue that has for sure gone on with Relevant. I don't think anybody's going to argue that, including Cameron Strang, the owner himself. All right. The other thing that started coming out was employee abuse, manipulation, underpay, incredibly demanding work schedules. Just, you can follow the rabbit hole down for Twitter and do whatever you got to do. But yeah, it happened, guys. And I was a part of it. So I've got 10 questions I would ask. And before I do that, the preamble would be, the first question I have to ask is, Well, I was there for 16 years. I was not a full-time employee, but I was Johnny on the spot when they needed some extra writing done. I shared my resources with them. At times, I got uh, interviews that they couldn't get on their own when the magazine was smaller because I was in radio in Chicago. I had them on my radio show a lot. Like back when the radio station I was with was bigger than the magazine, I had them on my radio show a lot. And, early on I believed in it. And somewhere along the lines, I should have been asking more questions about why I was still buying in on this thing and why it was okay that the employee turnover was different than anywhere else I have ever seen. No, Relevant's not my only gig as a writer. I've written for probably 7 or 8 magazines at this point, maybe 10. But magazines of varying sizes, virtually all of them had a better rate of pay than Relevant. Um, I mean, there is some turnover for sure on the media world, but this was out of control. And so the first thing I have to ask myself is, why didn't I let myself see it? And that's still something I'm working through. I think I tend to be pretty loyal. I think that especially when I've been with something since the beginning, it's like easy for me to see that as part of my identity. Since I was like a day one OG, I mean, I'm practically the freaking historian at this point. Like I truly believe I worked with every editor that's worked at Relevant, unless there was one before the first editor I started working with. I don't think so. I think he was the founding editor. I'm going to hold their names. I may mention a couple of current employees. I'm going to hold the names of past employees. And the thing is, I'm actually still friends with a lot of these people. And when they left, nobody ever emailed me. Like, I would have been out hard if somebody just would have said somewhere along the way, you know, like, this is what's going on. Like, why don't you bounce? And I think the reason nobody ever did that is honestly because they were beat down so bad before they got out of there. They just didn't have it in them. That's just a guess on my part. All right. Here's what I'm not here to do. I am not here to absolutely just destroy anyone. I've known Cameron since probably 03, 04, 05. Run him a few times in person. I have no idea what's in his heart. I'm not going to make any judgment calls about his internal life. So I'm not going to call him a racist. I am going to say that the way that the company was being conducted and things that he said in meetings were really inappropriate. But I don't know what's going on in his heart. So, I don't know what pushed him or how he became the kind of manager that treats people the way that you can find a lot online right now. That is between him and a therapist and God and whoever chooses to stay on with this company and whoever chooses to work there in the future. He owes me nothing, okay? I'm going to try to go even-handed here. All right, so Cameron stepped down temporarily today. I don't know exactly what to think of that, which we better just get into the questions. All right, question number 1 about the scandal. What steps will the accountability board take to regulate Relevance? That's one of the things that Relevant has said is this thing got out of control. We're going to have some kind of accountability board. Yeah, but your accountability board can be 2 of your cousins and your best friend from 3rd grade and your college dorm buddy, right? Mark Driscoll did this before he stepped all the way down. He was like, oh, well, I'm changing. Look at all these things I'm doing. And he tried to change his tone and everything. That dude did not change one iota, as far as I can tell. And I'm not just guessing because I watch things happen on Twitter. I am telling you this from having worked with people who were employed there and were crushed under the weight of his megalomania. Okay, so just this idea that, I'm going to go to counseling. I'm going to hire an accountability board. Things are going to be different. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. But, it is a private company, but private companies run on trust. And so if they want to exist as a brand, I would suggest that Relevant lets us know who's on the board and why they belong there. I would say that people who have experience dealing with church scandals and finding some healing and a way forward would be a very good place to start. Question number 2. Will Cameron issue a specific public apology to Andre and Rebecca? All right. Yes, that would be a very good place to start. I think you got to get on the frickin' phone. And, I mean, he didn't call me. I mean, dude, if anybody from Relevant wants to talk about this, I ain't hiding. You better let me finish this thing before you reach out. But I'm not hiding. You can come talk to me if you want to talk to me, okay? Heck, I might be in Orlando before the end of the year. So if you want to sit down and have lunch, whoever, or, I mean, you know, if you're in Nashville, I'll probably be there before the end of the year. You know, to the employee Jesse, who's on the podcast, who I do consider a great human being for the most part, although he's probably made some mistakes here, just like me. You know, I'm probably not going to get to Virginia, but for the most part, even people who are involved on this, that I've called some shots out on, I mean, I'll sit down with you face to face if you want, all right? So question 2, will Cameron issue a specific public apology to Andre and Rebecca? And he needs to say that. I don't think, I mean, this is beyond like talking to them on the phone. I think he's been way too cruel as a boss. He needs to say something and name what happened. And that has not been there yet. I would assume that the statement that got released was surely run through a PR firm, possibly run through a couple of lawyers to make sure he's good. And if he wants to be somebody who speaks about faith and culture nationally, he needs to go ahead and get back on a real public apology. And some others too, but Andre and Rebecca have shared their stories, and they're jacked. Like, what they went through is jacked. One of the things that's true about Relevant is they can't keep freaking having people move across the country, pay them nothing, and then have Cameron fire them in 2 months. It wasn't quite 2 months for Andre, but he did move there from, I believe, LA, and he was there for less than a year because they just destroyed him. All right, and actually, let's talk about apologies for a second, because Andre and I'm kind of surprised we're friends, and I mean that's definitely was my fault. Andre and I got into a pretty public social media spat that it was dumb. First of all, it was my fault, and it was dumb. And to Andre's extreme credit, he did something that very, very few people could do. He did not let it affect my standing with the company. He did not work with me anymore as an editor, but he, you know, just let me keep going. Most people wouldn't do that. I mean, Cameron certainly did not have that level of maturity. I hear that Cameron used the Relevant Twitter account to kind of levy some personal vendettas and stuff, right? But Andre and I probably wouldn't have ever talked again, except somebody retweeted him or replied about something, and I thought he was taking a shot at me like a year later, and I was just like, dude, just name me. You know, what the heck? And it turns out it's just coincidence. Anyway, the fact that we kind of got into another fight on Twitter 18 months later led to an actual, like, kind of DM conversation that was a little more toned down, led to a phone conversation, led to me apologizing, and led to us being friends. And so that's all you got to do. And in this case, it's gone so much further that there's some people that Cameron should not talk to on the phone, that he should leave her alone for the rest of their lives. But just like I did, it kind of doesn't matter why you got there. Just turn the thing around and mean it. Like, mean it, okay? I can't know for sure if he means it or not, but I mean, I can't prove it in a court of law, but you can normally tell, right? All right, we're 15 minutes. I'm going to keep going on these. All right. I don't have a number 3, do I? Oops. Oh, I guess there's only 9 questions. All right. So the next question that we got to know is, what is Relevant? Okay. What is Relevant as a magazine? There definitely a lot of the questions I've gotten about is sort of about the political leanings of the magazine, the theological leanings of the magazine. They say they're for everybody, and they just got to pick. I think that's one of the things that's been difficult here. My ideal would be that Relevant would be something that would publish opposing viewpoints, that would, you know, kind of push the envelope by. I'd love to see some point counterpoint stuff as, you know, they're in a tough spot. Society has gotten more divisive, right? I mean, it's a tough time to be in this thing. By the way, hang on, let me make sure I'm on YouTube. Okay, cool. I'm on YouTube. All right, hang on. Gosh dang it, let me get that thing back. All right. But specifically, there's been kind of a lot of questions, comments from people I know about the social justice angle of Relevant. And over the course of a couple of years, I have been, I guess, too social justice oriented for them and not social justice oriented enough. So I'm going to explain that here in a second. Movie from maybe 2014, 2015, Birth of a Nation, which was the Nat Turner story, which I wrote a piece on describing it as no movie ever, secular or Christian or whatever, has used more scripture and more Bible verses. And I mean, there's these incredible like debate scenes in there where this slave, I believe, slave is like a slave preacher, and the plantation owner are arguing about slavery, and they're going, or white guy, basically a white guy from Sons of Anarchy, they're going back and forth on whether or not the Bible justifies slavery. And I mean, it's just verse after verse after verse. And it's a pretty straightforward, like, I didn't say it was a perfect film. It's pretty good. I mean, standalone entertainment movie. It was pretty dang good. I had it all lined up. I had my edits lined up, and then it got pulled because reasons. I don't know what the heck, other than from what it sounds like, this could have been a personal bias by Cameron. I mean, he said when the roots on the cover of Relevant didn't sell well, he said, allegedly in a meeting, well, I say allegedly, I guess so I don't get sued, but my friend Ryan, has said it in print, and I have worked with Ryan pretty closely as an editor. And Ryan said that Cameron said, well, maybe that issue didn't sell well because people don't want scary black people on the cover. Okay, that's jacked up. I mean, there's no excuse for that. Where did you learn to think like that? Where did you learn to talk like that? So that's when I was too social justice oriented for Relevant. Just a couple of years later, I tried to do, and keep in mind, I'm a film and TV writer, a little bit of music writing. I wasn't doing heavy theological pieces. But even in pop culture, they thought I was either pushing too far or inexplicably thought that I was, I don't know, too something the other way. A movie called Sorry to Bother You. It was terrible. It got a whole bunch of positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which that's another story. I have been inexplicably cut out of the Rotten Tomatoes ecosystem, even though they approved me, said I was coming in. I actually believe it's because I'm somewhat conservative leaning, and I don't think they let people like me in, even when we're writing for regular publications, because it was all set to go, and then they just did not let it happen. It was so flipping weird. And I've heard several other stories like that from people who, have been in similar situations. I think they probably read my Twitter, saw something they didn't like, and wanted to make sure that certain movies got certain scores, and that they weren't going to let me jack that up. All right, anyway, movie Sorry to Bother You. Terrible film. Terrible film. One of the worst movies that's ever been made, but it's also very social justice oriented. And so the fact that I wrote a negative review saying the first half hour of the movie was great, if they would have stuck with that, which was sort of like a Office Space style comedy about telemarketing and the like the world of what it's like to just cold call people. They had some pretty good things to say about poverty and working low wage jobs and racism, and it was really good. Then the movie turns into like this like war thriller thing, and it ends with this like sci-fi thing that basically says that that Jeff Bezos will one day turn people into horse people so that they can work harder in the Amazon warehouses. It's the worst movie I've ever seen. 99% on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. Relevant pulled the review because they said that a white person couldn't criticize this movie. I'm like, well, what is anybody that's got half of a an angle on narrative should be able to see that this is a pretty bad movie. So I went from being too progressive from them to not being progressive enough, right? And I look back and, if you want to talk about kind of what a staff looks like, the fact that I was pushing stuff that I really had to fight for at different times to get in the magazine, it's probably because, I guess you got a white guy fighting for it because kind of had a pretty much white guy hipster staff, and that was pretty much who was speaking into this. But what I had to do to get films like Dear White People covered, I mean, it was like those were a lot of times I kind of really had to push on those. So they got to decide what is relevant. Is it relevant liberal theologically? Is it relevant conservative theologically? Is relevant progressive and woke? Is relevant pulled back from that? Is relevant a place where all those ideas can be pushed alongside each other? And my take has been that relevant has been whatever Cameron feels like it is, and they need a much more clearly defined mission statement. All right. Magazine accuracy. This drives me crazy. By the way, it's over. I'm never going to get published again. Like, I called out the CEO. I'm calling out some pretty big issues with the magazine. I mean, I have seen the beginning, middle, and end of my journalism career. A lot of those times are wrapped up in relevant, and it's game over. So accuracy. So in the last 10 days, okay, I did an article about climate change. Okay, and it's like, well, if you're a Christian, you better support climate change. I think the article was called "This is the only planet we've got." Nothing in there about the counterpoint, which is the way I would always write. Like, I would at least give the other side an angle. Nothing in there about the counterpoint of, if China and India are not in on this, whatever we do is not going to work. It was just all a lot of feelings, basically. Sloppy journalism. I'm sorry. But again, and from a good writer, somebody who I'm pretty sure, doesn't like me, has not liked me for years, but overall as a writer, I really respect. But relevance been a place where people were under a lot of pressure to generate content quickly, and maybe it was because maybe it fell below the mark. Maybe it didn't do a counterpoint because there just wasn't time to think through it, or maybe it's just because the magazine's gotten that lazy that you don't even have to put out a counterpoint or try to argue against the other side. And unfortunately, that's kind of become a political reality of the day. Sorry. The other one, Brett Kavanaugh. Oh, new allegations surfaced against Brett Kavanaugh. So that's true. New allegations did surface against Brett Kavanaugh, and within a day, that was called out as the alleged victim doesn't remember it, said it didn't happen. You can read about that yourselves. But Relevant just let that run. There was no update. There was no retraction. The New York Times had to do a retraction. CNN had to do a retraction. Relevant was fine to just smear it. And that's where I call into question some of the political leanings of the magazine. Not that I think the magazine has to line up with my politics. Actually, that's one of the reasons that I wrote for Relevant, is I thought that maybe somewhere in Christian media, in kind of mainstream Christian media, there should be one person who at least was, had some kind of conservative voice. And I sure didn't say it. I mean, it's not like I'm a hardcore or anything. I supported Marco Rubio. And I don't know that I've really ever endorsed a candidate on social media. I tend to stay away from any particular causes or anything like that outside of raising money for charity. I'll back my friends. I tend not to want to support organizations or hashtags in general because you don't know what those things are going to turn into. Conor McGregor, during a press conference when they said that everybody says you're not going to win this fight, he said, with all due respect to everybody bleep everybody, and that's kind of how I've been with causes and that type of thing. I tend not to I tend not to go there. So maybe I got a little more leeway because I have been a little more quiet about what I believe, but I still think that I actually did face some. Certainly faced bias in my career for being conservative, probably a little bit irrelevant from different individuals, not from the brand necessarily, and definitely in the kind of Chicago media scene and that type of thing. All right, I kind of combined a couple of things there, but I would say that relevant just needs a clear mission statement. Either we're going to be straight ahead journalism that produces opposing views sometimes, or we're right, we're left, we're speaking in tongues, we're Baptists. Pick, but the audience deserves to know what they're reading beyond just God, life, progressive culture. Now that Cameron is out of there and Cameron's micromanagement and whims aren't being subjected onto the copy, what are you guys going to be? You guys have to decide that. All right, almost done here. All right, let's talk about money. I have seen, and I'm going to be careful because I honestly wonder, I don't want to do anything, that would require lawyers. But relevant, Rebecca Jo Marie in her blog post said she took a huge pay cut to work there as the editor of the magazine. She was making like $44,000 a year. I've seen Relevance ad cards because I didn't wind up doing it, but for one of my clients that I work with, I was actually going to buy some ads or help them buy some ads, right? And certainly on paper, if they're selling their ad cards out, it looks like Relevant's a pretty good little business. But in 20 years, they've never really gotten beyond a staff of 10, and they haven't apparently ever been able to pay that well. So whatever's going on there. As somebody who's worked in a lot of different kinds of businesses now, I at least hope that a healthier Cameron or a healthier leadership situation, whatever that looks like, means that it can be better run and people can be better paid. The amount of work these people have been asked to do to produce this content versus what they're getting paid is it's really painful. And quite frankly, I don't think anybody should do it. Like, I don't think for a brand that size, you should not be working that much and making $44,000 a year, and you wouldn't be anywhere else. And I do think it's quite possible that there was kind of some spiritual manipulation of like, oh, well, you're doing this for God, oh, we're going to grow. I mean, it's been like almost 2 decades. You're still about the same size or smaller as when I was first around. What's up with that? There's some money questions that need to be answered, and hopefully improved upon, or maybe it's just not a viable business. I mean, bottom line. All right, number 9. I'm going to push on this one. Not everybody's going to agree with this, but whatever. The next question I have is restitution to employees, and I would say that some people have been beat on so hard psychologically that I think Cameron would do well to pay out of pocket for their therapy. I don't know how many people that is, but it's hard for me to imagine any other situation where I think Andre and Rebecca certainly could have sued the brand, the company, and had a pretty good day in court over what happened. I think probably several people could have gotten a lawyer, and just kind of nobody did. And I would say that, to me, it would be a good idea for Cameron to do that. Some kind of restitution to the employees who've been hurt worse. I'm not saying you got to give them a pile of cash, but help give them some resources to get some help from what they've been through. All right, finally, number 10. Will any new players enter the market? I've seen a little bit of this on Twitter where people, and I'll get to these questions here in a second, but want to start new stuff. I believe Slate Magazine's interested in the story, so we'll see if this is on Slate. We'll see where this goes from here. I kind of hope there's more competition in the market. I think the fact that Relevant's the only magazine, the only brand doing something like this, probably has led to Cameron being able to treat people like he has, because of the fact that, in a way, it's like if you want to do this kind of work, you can only do this kind of work for Cameron, and that's really not cool. So hey, take some risks. If you're out there, that's your thing. Go do it. For me, this is the end of the road. It was already the end of the road, to be honest. And I would say that, as far as I can tell, um, the last editor I was working for, I'm not going to name his name, you know, he left, and I do not write political pieces. I write about pop culture and career. And when I had to pitch to a new editor, which, I mean, sadly, somebody I've known for a long time, used to be on my radio show in Chicago, the editor I was pitching to, in the last couple of weeks, I had sent over a handful of things, and I just got the cold shoulder. So I had taken a little bit of a break from writing for Relevant, which I think is deserved after 16 years. Took a few months off, and I wanted to get back into it, honestly, for selfish reasons, because I'm doing this adulting gamer thing, and I want to build up an email list. And I knew that if I wrote for Relevant, people would find me, because that's definitely happened before. And one of the reasons I hung around so long is I figured out how to make Relevant work for me. And so, I'm definitely done. I mean, if Cameron friggin' flew to St. Louis to hug me, I still don't think I'd make it through the rest of the ecosystem. I cannot imagine a situation where I'm ever published there again. I am debating whether or not to ask for my old content to be taken down. They get paid off clicks, and I've had some pretty good pieces in the past. I've got some. I write keywords well for search engine optimization, which means my old stuff should be getting hit. And I don't know if I'm going to ask them that or not, but I mean, it's over for me no matter what. I got a lot of other stuff I'm doing in my life. I would say this is the end of my journalism career. Wish it would have come to a more satisfying close, but this is how it went down. But even as I was reading the stories of people who got burned so bad and hurt so bad by Relevant, Rebecca Marie Joe is such a good freaking writer. She's so good. You should follow her stuff. Andre is so insightful, and a leader that has got so much ahead of him. I think those people should be writing, and Ryan Ham and Aaron Hanberry, and even going back to my very first editor there, Juan Kim, people who have written fantastic stuff. And even, I'm not gonna throw this person under the bus by name, but even the person that's dissed me, they won't get back to me. I think they pretty much cut me out of Relevant before this whole thing ever happened. It's somebody that I have complimented, over email and on Twitter, just saying, man, this is a really good line. Man, this is a really good paragraph. Man, that inspires me to go write. So there's a lot of people at Relevant burned that can make something new. So the last question is, will any new players emerge from this market? There it is. I mean, you just witnessed the death of my journalism career. I guess I could do another video. I can't really imagine I'm going to have anything else to say here. Please check out the projects of everybody that's been cut. Please continue to follow this story. I know that a lot of people who have been fired, have been burned, have been abused, are probably working on, or hopefully working together on some creative solutions. Please continue to apply pressure to the brand that if this turnabout is not real, then they deserve to go out of business. And I hate that for the low-level employees who don't have a trust fund like I'm sure Cameron does, because his dad had a publishing empire, and that's how the business started, was with free office space. Hey, I mean, I don't fault him for that. I'm just saying he's going to weather financial instability a lot easier than somebody making $44,000 a year is. And so, I hope Relevant fixes it. If they don't, I hope it's over. But I really do hope for the best for the people I've worked with on both sides of this controversy. There's things Cameron should never be able to do again. One of them being he should never be dumb enough to contact Andre or Rebecca. He should never be in a position of leadership without people very closely scrutinizing his every move again. And I don't know what's going to happen to him. I mean, I don't know the dude. I've known him a long time. I wouldn't say I know him well. I've just known him a long time. And, you know, that's up to him and his friends and his family, whatever. All right. But again, I will try to keep pushing forward the people who worked on this. Andre and Rebecca did it all. They brought a corrupt media empire to its knees by speaking out, and then everybody else getting behind this. And I think that's it. Let me grab some questions, and then I mean that's it. I'm just gonna retweet other people saying stuff about this. I'm done after tonight. We'll go back to regularly scheduled programming. So, did they explicitly tell you that you couldn't criticize Sorry to Bother You because you were white? Yes, they said it was bad optics. Let's assume that Cameron takes right actions privately and publicly. What should the proper response be from his critics online? In other words, if he does the right thing, what's the right thing for them? Okay. I think it takes a really long time to prove whether or not you were sincere and whether or not you've changed. So, what is the right thing for critics online? If he does do the right thing, I mean, I've already seen him hammered for the statement being too curated by lawyers or PR people or whatever. And I hammered on him a little bit just because I know his writing style, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I mean, if he does change, people are going to get too bored with trying to chase him around. Nobody's going to stick with this forever. If he doesn't change, I hope we keep up the pressure. The whole thing about that, like people go, "Oh, I was bullied on Twitter." Close the app. You know? So I don't know. I mean, if he does change and people still bother him on Twitter, he can mute them. You don't have to block people. You can mute them, which is my favorite because I love the idea that there are people out there that are screaming at me on Twitter and I don't even know what's happening. I just think it's so funny. And then, is this going to be better than the premiere of The Prodigal Son? I don't even know what that show's about, but I did see something about it on Twitter. So, I don't know. Is that pretty much the questions? All right. Hopefully the Bears are winning. Hopefully the Cardinals. Oh, well, the Bears are up 28-3. Hopefully the Cardinals are winning. Sorry, pretty dry throat. That's it, guys. It was a privilege to write for Relevant while it lasted.